transmission of China. The saying that distinguished students come from poor and humble families, and there are no more than 3 generations in poverty of a family, reflect people's expectations of benign vertical socioeconomic status mobility. China's anti-poverty has made remarkable achievements, but it is not to be denied that there are still some disadvantaged groups in society in terms of income and development opportunities, a phenomenon of intergenerational transmission of poverty, much worse than the pure poverty. The solidification of socioeconomic status will stifle social volatility, which is the feature and main cause of long-term poverty, as well as a key link in poverty management. Therefore, it is undoubtedly of great practical significance for the formulation of public policy to probe into the factors that influence the mobility of socioeconomic status, especially the intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. Intergenerational transmission is a long-term concern of academia. Parents influence the future life of individuals through direct and indirect ways. Educational mobility and occupational mobility are 2 important factors affecting the intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. There are 2 opinions on the relationship between educational mobility and intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. One is that educational mobility can promote intergenerational mobility and break down socioeconomic status solidification. The other holds that education has become a tool for families of dominant socioeconomic status to achieve intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. Occupational mobility also has a profound influence on the intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. Case et al. Berman believe that the offspring born in families with higher occupational class had a stronger cognitive and learning abilities and would have higher socioeconomic status. On the contrary, the offspring with parents of lower occupation status had less possibility of having higher social and economic status, thus aggravating socioeconomic status solidification. Mobility is devoted by intergenerational differences. The differences in educational level, occupational level between parents and children, and differences between the family's subjective socioeconomic status when the children were 14 years old and its current subjective socioeconomic status. These 3 types of mobility are divided into 3 directions, namely downward mobility, intergenerational inheritance, and upward mobility. Taking intergenerational educational mobility and occupational mobility as independent variables, this paper explores the models of ordered logic to employ their efforts of intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status.
Someone's audio is on and that can be a disturbance. Could you please check that if you can? Sorry about that. Please go ahead.
You need to unmute.
Okay, I can hear it. This paper uses the data of Chinese General Social Survey in 2015. It covers all kinds of groups nationwide with about 1,100 samples in 2015. After data screening and processing, this paper obtains 2,232 benchmark samples of parents-children pairing. Key variables. The current socioeconomic status identity, past family socioeconomic status when the respondent was 14 years old. The hierarchy is sorted by 1 to 10 points and processed into 5 levels according to every 2 levels, where less than past yi equals to 1 represent the family hierarchy when the respondent was 14 years old. The socioeconomic status of the parents is higher than that of the offspring, namely the downward mobility. When equals to past, yi equals to 2 refers to intergenerational inheritance, which means the parents and offspring has the same socioeconomic status. When greater than past, yi equals to 3 denotes upward mobility. The socioeconomic status of the offspring is higher than that of the parents. The transformation models of intergeneration transmission of education (EDU) and that of occupation (EMP) are similar to that of intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. Varied order probate model and conditional mixed process is used in this research. EDU is endogenous variable C, which refers to the numbers of siblings, is instrumental variable. Alpha represents the correlation coefficient between instrumental variable and endogenous variable. X refers to other experimentary variables of the second stage, and delta represents stochastic error. Correlation analysis. The intergenerational socioeconomic status transformation coefficient is the largest one. The correlation coefficient of intergenerational educational transformation in the Western regions is higher than that in the Eastern regions, and that in the Western urban area is higher than that in the rural area. The correlation coefficient of intergenerational occupation transmission in the Eastern region is higher than that in the Western region. Through the analysis of benchmark regression, it can be seen that in Model 1, the upward mobility coefficient of intergenerational education is larger than 1. The upward mobility of intergenerational education and that of intergenerational occupation are significantly promote the upward transmission of intergenerational socioeconomic status, thereby improve the solidification of socioeconomic status and comparison of the influence of intergenerational education and occupational upward mobility on intergenerational transmission. It is found that upward mobility coefficient of intergenerational occupation is larger than that of intergenerational education, which indicates upward mobility of intergenerational occupation plays a greater role in socioeconomic status improvement than upward mobility of intergenerational education. Given the difference between urban and rural social structures, this paper divides the samples into urban and rural samples. It shows that upward mobility of intergenerational education and that of occupation can significantly promote upward mobility of intergenerational socioeconomic status. This paper examines the influence of intergenerational educational mobility and occupational mobility on the intergenerational transmission of socioeconomic status. The samples are further divided into Eastern, Central, and Western regions according to geographical location, and the influence of age, gender, and other factors are controlled. In view of the fact of the social structure of China had may by the characteristics of times, the same occupation may not be identical in different periods. Therefore, it is necessary to analyze the factors influencing the individual socioeconomic status in different periods. The sample of offspring born in 1970 to 1980s shows that upward transmission of intergenerational occupation has a significant effect on socioeconomic status improvement. The upward transmission of intergenerational socioeconomic status of offspring born in 1981 to 1990 is more attributed to the upward transmission of intergenerational education. Strong inheritance is present in socioeconomic status, and the hierarchy correlation between parents and children is stronger than their educational and occupational correlation. Upward mobility of intergenerational education and occupation can contribute enormously to upward transmission of socioeconomic status, thus improving socioeconomic status solidification and breaking the intergenerational transmission of poverty. Intergenerational mobility presents regional, urban, and rural differences. Educational mobility and occupational mobility have different effects on the improvements of the socioeconomic status of the offspring born in different periods. Thanks very much.